What is going on, people of the internet? Khaotic here with a K-double-R, and welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time visiting my channel. Now today, guys, I want to talk about a discussion that has been going on within the LGBT community for quite a while now. But before I go into it, I do understand Pride Month is over. I may be late to the party, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm not late to the discussion. Because this discussion that I was originally introduced to like 3 years ago has been going on since and will probably continue on, given how much of a political topic Pride has become lately. An absolute shit show, if you ask me. Now, I must be honest, I don't understand why this is even a discussion at all. But of course, let's go over what the discussion is and what both sides are saying about said discussion. As you can tell from the title, Kink at Pride. Kink as in fetishes. Well, technically they're not one and the same, even though they are similar and considered synonyms, but nonetheless, that is what I mean by kink. Anyway, so what are both sides saying about Kink at Pride? Well, one side is all for it and think it should be implemented into Pride events, and the other side is completely against it. There's also a smaller minority group within the side of those who are for it, but we'll get into those people later. But what I will say is that small minority is what originally introduced me to this discussion. For those who are for Kink at Pride, say it's because it's a part of the LGBT community, since many LGBT people are into many kinks, and that it's pretty much been a part of the movement since its inception. And since Pride is all about being proud about your sexuality and your sexual orientation, that it just makes sense for Kink to be a part of Pride, since it's a part of people's sexuality. For those who are against it, their reasons are simply put: they don't want to be exposed to their kinks, and they do not consent to said actions. Not everyone has to partake in it just because you want to fulfill your kinks in public, and ignoring the fact that it could be considered a public indecency. Many people like to bring their children to Pride just because they either want to bring them to the event, or their children are discovering their own sexuality for the very first time, or sexual orientation, but still, and want to bring their children to the events so they can be part of the community, feel supportive, and give support. Now, real quickly, I just want to make this very clear before I go any further. These are not my opinions whatsoever. I mean, I made this pretty clear in the beginning of the video, but for those who might be a little bit hard-headed or didn't listen too much in the beginning, these are not my opinions. I'm pretty much just giving a summarized overview of what each side is saying on the matter. And just to be even more clear, this is people within the LGBT community, as in the community itself is divided on this matter. Not people outside of the community like conservatives and whatnot, no. People within the community. Even though technically plenty of LGBT people are technically conservative, like conservative gay people do exist. I know some people find it funny to hear conservative and gay in the same sentence, but they do exist. But nonetheless, this isn't this isn't a conservative or liberal discussion or issue for them. This is strictly a thing amongst the LGBT community that they're arguing over. And the reason why I say ignoring the fact that it could be public indecency, well, it partially depends on the kink, but also depending on circumstances such as maybe permits, they can be allowed to do such actions at said events. Not sure how people get a permit for that, but anyways, moving on. Now, the rebuttal from those who are pro-Kink at Pride is that, well, it's about pride of sexuality and sexual orientation, which, as much as people love to say that sex isn't the primary part of sexuality and sexual orientation, it literally is. It's not the only part, but it's literally the primary factor of what makes your sexuality and your sexual orientation. I mean, it's literally in the name after all. Thus, kids shouldn't even be at Pride to begin with. The rebuttal from the other side that is against Kink at Pride will say that Pride should be inclusive. And again, many people are bringing their kids because they're discovering their sexual orientation themselves. So of course they're going to want to be part of the community. Of course they're going to want to go to Pride events. Why would we not include them in one of the most inclusive communities? And again, you're just assuming everybody's going to be okay with seeing you in assless chaps and a cocksock to keep that at home in your bedroom. To which the final rebuttal to them would be, not all kinks are inherently sexual, and it's not like people are just going to be sucking dick right at the parade. It's literally just doing certain stuff like wearing leather or the whole Therian thing, I believe it's called. You know, where people pretend they want to be animals. And no, I'm not talking about furries. That's anthropomorphic animals. I mean like actual animals, as in acting like they're pretending to be a dog on a leash, flicking their owner's face and stuff like that. Literally acting like a domesticated animal, not an anthropomorphic sentient animal character. Which, I mean, yeah, I guess as long as you're not butt naked, then the leather isn't really going to be a problem, though I don't think it's the leather that people have an issue with. I think it's loosening up your genitals in public that people have a problem with. Also, that kind of contradicts the previous argument about, since sexuality is primarily about sex, thus kids shouldn't be at Pride, but Kink should. They also love to bring up asexuals, and what about the asexuals when they're into kinks themselves, especially the kinks that are not inherently sexual. I mean, again, yes, but usually the whole point of kinks is, even though the person may be into something that's not inherently sexual, is that it brings the person sexual gratification. Like being into feet. It's a kink that's not inherently sexual, and being into feet doesn't necessarily mean you want to, well, rub your genitalia on them. Whether it be smelling it, rubbing it, or sucking on a toe, the whole reason people are into that, like to do that, is because it brings them sexual gratification. Or even the fart fetish. Yes, there's an actual fetish where people like to sniff farts. There's nothing sexual about farts at all. But the whole thing about the kink is that it brings the people who like to smell them sexual gratification. And no matter what, that's something you shouldn't do around kids or include them in it. Why would I say include kids in it? Well, let's talk about that smaller minority group I mentioned earlier. In fact, the smaller minority group for Kink at Pride are the people more likely to make the asexual arguments and kink is not inherently sexual arguments, or contradict themselves on their previous arguments. For the ones who say kids shouldn't be at Pride are the ones who will not deny that kinks are inherently sexual. The ones who will say no it's not, or will contradict themselves, are sometimes the ones who are not only pro kink at Pride, but want kids to still be at Pride with kink. And I shit you not, want to include kids in kink. No, this smaller minority, as far as I know, is not the MAP community. It's just a bunch of fucking idiots that literally think kinks are not inherently sexual, thus that it should be okay to bring kids into them. I don't recommend looking into any of their arguments because they're just fucking brain dead, and again, they're just going to contradict themselves and make paradoxical arguments. I'm going to go deeper into that because I've already mentioned that it doesn't matter if it's not inherently sexual, whatever it is you out there may be into. The whole reason people are into kinks or fetishes at all is because it brings them sexual gratification. Just knowing that alone, at no point should anybody ever say kink and kids in the same fucking sentence, let alone say they want to include kids in kink unironically. I'm pretty sure any and every sane person with common fucking sense can say that without a doubt, that at no point should kink and kids be in the same fucking sentence. And to those people who actually believe that, well, let's just say you're part of the problem of why outsiders constantly say the LGBT community is full of groomers. You really don't help the community's case. And then want to sit there and say you're not a pedophile. You cannot say that with a straight face and not expect people to think you're a pedophile, or at the very least that you're not a part of the MAP community, which some of them probably are, but according to those who typically make those arguments, they're not pedophiles, but just want to bring kids into their kinks. I don't even know where to begin with that. It's just fucking dumb, and it's plain and simple. Kinks are inherently sexual. It doesn't matter if these people end up on a list. It's well deserved. Even if they're not actually into children, it's well deserved just for their fucking stupidity alone. And no tears will be shed for them. As far as my personal opinion on the matter, well, I'm just wondering, is this happening at every Pride event ever? Only in certain cities? Like, what is the real issue here? Or are these people primarily talking about at the Pride Parade? Because I thought that there were multiple events going on during Pride Month. So, knowing there's multiple events going on, wouldn't there be some events that are family friendly and others that are adult only, kink friendly? Like, what is the real issue here? So I decided to dig a little deeper, and then I found this video, which I'm going to show you a small clip of it, but if you want to see the rest, which I recommend seeing it, I will leave a link to it in the description down below.
I think during Pride, in the bigger, especially in the bigger cities, there's usually family-friendly events, and then there's non-family that aren't as PG. So as a parent, you should know what you're taking your child to. That they could be exposed to some images that you may not necessarily be comfortable explaining.
And never be afraid to have a conversation about it either. It's like, kids know. And if they see something, they're going to look it up. Even no matter how much you hide from them saying, oh, that's not a thing, that's not a thing. You see, they're going to look.
I do think it's up to the parent to know where they're, especially if you're a straight person bringing your child to Pride, know the venue that you're going to, and be aware that there could be some things you might have to, that might come up question-wise. That's ultimately, know where you're going. If you want to specifically bring your kid to a family-friendly event, bring them to a family-friendly event. Don't expect that every area that you're going to wander to during Pride is going to be that family-friendly. Just know when you go to a Pride event, especially if you're not part of the actual community itself, that you are a guest in the community, and that you should be ready to explain if you're not going to a specific family friendly event, that you should be prepared to answer any questions your child might have. Right? And then on the flip side, if you're on the other side of the coin and you're part of the community and you're going to a family friendly event,
be family friendly.
Be family friendly. Don't push the boundaries. We don't. That's not a fight we need to have.
Alright then, so knowing that is the case, then what is the real fucking problem here? If there are multiple events going on during Pride, and some are family friendly and some are not, why are people even having this discussion in the first place? For those of you who want kink included events or adult only events, go to the adult only events instead of crying about it. And the same thing for those who want family-friendly events. If you want to go to the family-friendly events, then just go to the right event instead of crying you went to the wrong one. If either side is doing improper research to find out which event they're going to, then that is their own goddamn fault. However, this is assuming they did not do the proper research. Perhaps the events they went to did not properly disclose whether or not they're a family-friendly or adult-only or kink-inclusive event. If that's the case, then the fault lies on the event for not providing the proper information. If it's going to include stuff that kids should not partake in, then not only should this information be disclosed, but kids shouldn't even be allowed at all with or without parents' permission. The same way you wouldn't allow a kid at a bar or a smoke shop with or without a parent's permission. Not to mention for those who may prefer the adult-only or kink-inclusive events. How are they supposed to know if that information is not properly disclosed? It's basically doing a disservice to both demographics. Both the ones who want it and the ones who don't. But again, I'm not sure if that's the real case here. And I really think this will depend on where you live. I'd imagine the issue would vary from city to city. For the most part, I haven't heard too much of an issue happening here in my city of Chicago. Though to be honest, I don't really care to go to Pride events or really contribute to Pride Month in general. I just like to stay at home and do my own thing. Oh, and before anybody thinks I'm a cisgendered white male, I'm a Latino pansexual. I technically do, I guess, identify as cisgender, but, people might just assume I'm straight and think I'm not allowed to speak on the matter, or da-da-da-da, but yeah, I'm pansexual, I'm technically LGBT, I just don't really care for the events. I just like to stay at home and stick to myself. But for the most part, as far as my knowledge goes, I'm pretty sure there are kink-inclusive events and parades, but those are adult-only events as far as I know. Kids are not allowed. Though it's not like a club where they'll check you and your ID at the front. Some parents may not know or care that the event is kink-inclusive or for adults only. They could just walk in onto the event and see something they wouldn't want to. But again, they need to do the proper research on the events they go to. Otherwise, it's on the event to disclose that information. And they are at fault if it is not mentioned. Oh, and as for the parents who don't care that kink is at Pride, yeah, I don't know what else to say otherwise that is just fucking sus as hell. Yeah, you should care about your kids being exposed to something that is primarily meant for sexual gratification. Never mind some of those videos where I see kids getting a fucking lap dance and ass straight in their face. What parents are allowing this shit? And in my city, there are family-friendly and adult-only events. So just do your research and go to the right one. And don't act entitled. It's not for you, and it's not your event, so don't act like you own the place or whatever, or that you're entitled to anything. Go somewhere else. Now, whatever the issue may be in your city, that is up to you and other residents to handle that. But as far as the whole discussion on whether or not kink should be allowed at Pride, well, if there are adult-only events, then yes. Just keep them at the adult-only events and let them have their fun. It's not that hard. But you best believe this discussion is going to come around next year, and people are still going to act like it's fucking rocket science. Anyways, what are your opinions on the matter, and how do you feel about kink at Pride? And how do you feel about my video? If you've enjoyed the video, leave a like. If not, leave a dislike and a comment telling me why, because any and all interaction is good interaction for my channel and the algorithm, and any and all criticism can help me get better. And I really am curious to hear your thoughts. And listen, if you're against Kink Pride, fine. But again, if there are adult-only events, why do you care? Kids are not supposed to be there. Kids are not allowed. They won't see anything if it's actually an adult-only event. And if you don't like it, go somewhere else. Don't be offended that the event is trying to cater to a specific demographic. If you're not that demographic, then it's not for you. That's it. That's all. It's that simple. But if you gotta, if you're in a smaller city, a smaller town, and there's not too many events, just a primary event, and you still want to be able to bring your kids to it, well, then that's a bit more understandable. But again, if there are family friendly and if there are options, just pick the option that best suits you. That's it. That's all I have to personally say on the matter. But again, if there's one primary event and there's not many other options, that's up to you and other residents to deal with that. If anything, I think just make your own family-friendly or adult-only event. Khaotic out. Have a good one.